You know the moment. You walk out to the garden, coffee in hand, and there it is. A tomato plant at the edge of the yard, leaves gone the color of old paper, stems sagging toward the dirt, the flowers that opened last week already closed for good. Most people look at that and go straight for the shovel. Pull it, toss it on the compost pile, tell themselves there was nothing to be done. For years that was me too. Here's the thing, nobody tells you standing there, with the shovel in your hand. In almost every case, that plant isn't finished. It's starving. Running out of one or two specific nutrients, the soil just can't give it anymore. And every single one of those nutrients can be back in that plant within 48 hours, using stuff that's already sitting in your kitchen right now. I didn't figure this out from a gardening book. I learned it the same way I learned to garden at all. Watching my grandfather work a backyard that fed our whole family every summer without him, ever. Once driving to the garden center for a bag of fertilizer. I used to think that was just frugality, an old habit from a harder time. It wasn't. It was knowledge, passed down to him the same way it had been passed down for generations before that, about what a dying plant is actually asking for and where to find it without spending a dime. I'm going to walk you through 5 of those kitchen fertilizers today. What each one does, why it works faster than anything you buy in a bag, and the mistake almost everybody makes that keeps these from working the way they're supposed to. Stick with me to the end because there's a specific order to use these in, one my grandfather always followed, and skipping that order is the difference between guessing and actually fixing the problem. I'll be honest, the first time he told me a dying tomato plant just needed onion skins and rice water, I figured he was exaggerating, the way grandparents sometimes do about the old ways being better. I'd already spent money on the blue crystals in the plastic jug, the ones you mix with a hose attachment. They worked well enough, so I didn't see the point in trying something that came out of the trash. It took losing a whole row of peppers one July, after the store-bought stuff stopped keeping up, before I actually sat down and let him walk me through this properly. What he showed me that summer is what I'm handing you now. Start with the onion peel, because it's probably in your trash right now. Here's a question worth sitting with for a second. Which part of the onion actually carries more potassium? The white bulb you cook with, or the dry papery skin you peel off and throw away? It's the skin. Those outer layers, considered garbage for about as long as kitchens have existed, carry some of the most concentrated potassium, calcium, magnesium, and iron you'll find anywhere in the produce aisle. They also carry a compound called quercetin, the same one that makes red wine and blueberries good for your heart. In a plant, it shields the leaves from harsh sun and steadies the whole system when a heat wave rolls through. Now this is where most people take a wrong turn. They hear onion peels and they think, dig them into the soil, let them break down, feed the roots. That works technically, but it takes weeks, and a wilting plant doesn't have weeks. The trick my grandfather used was water, the same principle as a tea bag pulling color into a hot cup. Drop a handful of dry onion skins into a quart jar of cool water, let it sit at room temperature for 24 to 48 hours, and the water turns the color of weak tea, then deep amber. That color is the potassium, the calcium, the quercetin. Leaving the plant tissue and going straight into a liquid the roots can drink immediately. No composting, no waiting. Poured at the base of a struggling tomato, it can thicken the stems and deepen the leaves within days. I keep a jar going on my counter through the whole growing season now, refilling it with fresh skins every time I cook. So there's always a batch ready by the time something in the yard starts looking tired. Second one, and this is the one that surprised me most when my grandfather first explained it, because it doesn't feed the plant at all. It feeds what's living in the soil around it. Fermented rice water. Rinse a pot of uncooked rice, save that cloudy water instead of pouring it down the sink, and leave it covered at room temperature for 3 to 5 days. Fresh, it's mildly useful, a little starch, a little vitamin content. But once it develops that faint sour smell, like the first hint of sourdough starter, it's turned into something else entirely. That smell means lactic acid bacteria and wild yeast have moved in. And once that water hits the soil, diluted 1 part rice water to about 10 parts plain water, it doesn't hand the plant a meal. It builds the plant a working kitchen. Beneficial microbe populations around the roots can triple within a week of using it. The mistake, and I've made it myself, is pouring it on fresh, straight out of the rinse and wondering why nothing happened. It has to sour first. No smell, no results. And don't skip the dilution here either. Straight rice water is acidic enough to irritate tender roots, especially on young seedlings. So keep it at that 1:10 ratio, and it's gentle enough to use weekly all season long. Third, and this is the one for when a plant needs food today, not next week. Every kitchen has a forgotten vegetable somewhere, a tomato gone soft in the crisper drawer, a wilted head of lettuce, a bruised cucumber pushed to the back of the shelf. My grandfather never let those hit the trash. He'd crush them into a bucket, cover them with water, weigh them down with a plate so they stayed submerged, and let the whole thing ferment for about 2 weeks. What comes out is dark, cloudy, and honestly not great to smell, but that smell is the proof it worked. The bacteria in the water break the plant tissue apart and pull the nitrogen straight into the liquid faster than any compost pile could manage it. Diluted 1 part of that liquid to 30 parts water, poured at the base of the plant, and within 4 to 6 days, pale, tired leaves start coming back full and green. The mistake that burns more gardens than anything else on this list is skipping the dilution, or worse, spraying it straight onto the leaves thinking it'll work faster. It won't. It'll scorch them. This one goes on the soil at the correct strength, and nowhere near the foliage. Here's the part that still gets me every time I think about it. A single household throws out more usable nitrogen in 1 week of vegetable scraps than a small backyard garden actually needs in a month. It was never scarce. It was just going to the curb instead of the garden bed. Fourth is the one my grandfather called his full recipe because most struggling plants aren't missing just one thing. They're missing 4 or 5 things at once, in small amounts, all at the same time. This is where banana peels, crushed eggshells, used coffee grounds, a spoonful of Epsom salt, and a spoonful of blackstrap molasses all go into 1-gallon jug of warm water together. The banana peel brings potassium, the same mineral that drives flowering and keeps fruit from splitting as it ripens. The crushed eggshell brings calcium, which is exactly what's missing when you see that black sunken patch on the bottom of an otherwise good tomato. Used coffee grounds bring a slow release of nitrogen, and here's a detail worth clearing up because it gets repeated wrong constantly. People assume coffee grounds make soil acidic. Used grounds, the kind already brewed, sit close to neutral, right around where most vegetable gardens want to be anyway. They're feeding the soil, not souring it. Epsom salt is next, and it's worth being careful with this one. Magnesium sits at the center of every chlorophyll molecule in every green leaf there is, so when it's short, leaves start yellowing between the veins, while the veins themselves stay green. 1 tablespoon dissolved into the brew can reverse that pattern in days, but only if magnesium is actually the problem. Yellowing has other causes too: nitrogen shortage, iron shortage, a root sitting in water too long, and Epsom salt won't fix any of those. My grandfather always said to look at the pattern on the leaf before reaching for the salt, not just assume. And the last ingredient, the one almost nobody knows the real purpose of, is a tablespoon of blackstrap molasses. It's not really there for its own nutrients. It's there to feed the microbes in the water, and a fed microbe population multiplies fast enough to break the peels and shells down in 3 days instead of 3 weeks. Steep the whole jug 3 to 5 days covered, and you've got one pour that carries potassium, calcium, nitrogen, magnesium, and a live culture of working bacteria all at once. The mistake every time is leaving out the molasses and wondering why it's taking so long to see anything. Fifth, and this is the oldest one of the 5, older than coffee, older than the bananas in most grocery stores, going back to before synthetic fertilizer existed at all. My grandfather called it the giant tea bag, and old-timers in a lot of farming communities still call it manure tea. You take a shovel of aged, dried manure, chicken, cow, or rabbit, never fresh, and you tie it up inside a porous sack. An old pillowcase works fine, and drop that into a 5-gallon bucket of water for 3 to 5 days. The water pulls the nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and trace minerals out through the fabric, while the solid matter and any weed seeds hiding in it stays locked inside the sack where it can't touch your soil. Chicken manure runs the highest in nitrogen and pushes a tired plant hard into new flowering. Cow manure is gentler and better for long-term soil structure. Rabbit manure is the mildest of the three, gentle enough for young seedlings without burning a thing. My grandfather always said rabbit manure was the one worth remembering above the others, since it's the only manure gentle enough to use even without much aging at all, which made it the one he trusted around anything young or delicate in the bed. The one rule that can't be skipped here is the aging. Fresh manure carries too much ammonia and can scorch a whole row of seedlings inside of 2 days, so it needs 6 months to a year resting before it ever goes near that sack. Once it's brewed, dilute it down to the color of weak iced tea, about 1 part tea to 10 parts water, and apply it in the cool hours, early morning or the last light of evening, never at midday, when the heat burns off the nitrogen before the roots ever get a taste of it. Now here's the part my grandfather was specific about, and it's the piece most people trying this for the first time get wrong, because they treat all 5 like interchangeable options and just grab whichever one's easiest that day. He always used them in order, based on how bad off the plant actually was. If a plant is just a little pale or slow, start with the onion peel tea alone. It's the gentlest and the fastest to make. If the whole bed looks tired and stunted, not just one plant, that's a sign the soil itself is worn out, and that calls for the fermented rice water first, because you're not treating a plant at that point, you're rebuilding the whole system underneath it. If a single plant looks like it's actively collapsing, wilted, closing up its flowers, that's when the vegetable scrap digestate comes in, because it moves nitrogen into the roots the fastest of anything on this list. The full kitchen cocktail is for a plant showing more than one problem at once, yellowing and poor fruiting together, since it covers several deficiencies in a single pour. And the manure tea is what you keep in rotation once a plant has already turned the corner, feeding it steadily through the rest of the season so it doesn't slide backward again. Match the remedy to how far gone the plant actually is, instead of just grabbing whatever's closest, and you stop wasting time on a mild fix when the plant needed the strong one, or dumping the strong one on a plant that only needed a gentle nudge. There's a reason none of this ever showed up on the fertilizer aisle at the store, and it isn't because the crystals in the plastic bags work better. There's just no way to put a patent on a banana peel. No shelf space to sell for something that costs nothing. So it quietly disappeared from mainstream advice over the last several decades. Not because it stopped working, but because nobody could put a label on it and charge $9 a box. So that's the 5. Onion peel tea for a quick, gentle boost of potassium and calcium. Fermented rice water to rebuild the soil's own workforce when the whole bed looks worn down. Vegetable scrap digestate for the fastest nitrogen you can get into a collapsing plant. The full kitchen cocktail when more than one deficiency is showing at once. And manure tea to keep a recovered plant steady and fed for the rest of the season. Every one of them free, every one of them sitting in a kitchen or a shed you already have, and every one of them working within days instead of weeks. If this changed how you look at what's going in your trash can, I'd like to hear which one you're trying first. Drop it in the comments. And if you want more of this, the kind of garden knowledge that gets handed down in a family instead of sold on a shelf, hit subscribe, because there's plenty more of it coming. Next time your tomato starts turning that color of old paper, don't reach for the shovel just yet. Reach for the trash can instead. Happy gardening, and I'll see you in the next one.